She used to respond instantly. Now, silence. The more you chase, the colder she becomes. Today, we're exposing the psychological power move that turns the tables and shows you how to gain the upper hand when a woman ignores you. Perceived indifference is power. When a woman ignores you, the natural tendency is to feel rejection as a personal assault. The mind races with possibilities. Did I say something wrong? Did I come on too strong? What is she thinking? And in that chaos, the average man makes his fatal mistake. He reacts emotionally. He rushes to fix what may not even be broken. He texts again. He double-checks social media for signs of her life. He overinvests in a moment where she is underinvesting in him. That moment, though subtle, is the silent assassination of his power. The mind of a woman, especially one testing your position in her world, is not swayed by sentimentality or persistence. It is moved by perception. Power in the game of human relationships is never fully about reality. It is about what is perceived. And when she ignores you, she is creating a perception that her attention is scarce, that her interest is minimal, and that she holds a higher value. Whether consciously or unconsciously, she is placing herself on a pedestal and awaiting your response. But not all responses are equal. There is a vast difference between a man who begs and a man who disappears. Perceived indifference is not apathy. Apathy is weakness, a lack of care bred from insecurity or despair. Indifference, in the strategic sense, is a weapon. It is deliberate non-reaction. It is mastery over your emotional system. It is the ability to remain still while others provoke movement. The man who appears unaffected by a woman's withdrawal is not seen as emotionally numb. He is seen as self-contained. He is dangerous in the most seductive way, not because he chases, but because he doesn't need to. The error of most men is thinking that a woman's silence is a void to be filled, when in reality, it is a test to be passed. The test is simple. Can you remain grounded while the current shifts? Can you resist the temptation to explain yourself, to validate yourself, to insert yourself where you're not being invited? She may not consciously realize what she's doing, but instinctively, she senses the power dynamics at play. If you come running when she withholds, she learns your value is contingent on her attention. But if you hold your posture, silently, coldly, without complaint, she is forced to reconsider the game. The ignored becomes the ignorer. The hunted becomes the hunter. This is not cruelty. It is discipline. It is understanding that power in social dynamics flows not from noise but from silence, not from reaction but from control. You do not have to prove anything when you carry internal certainty. You do not need to explain when your presence already carries weight. A man who truly believes in his value does not flinch when someone else doubts it. He waits, he builds, he improves. He advances his world without pause. In doing so, he creates a magnetic force. Because nothing is more compelling than a man who does not seek validation, not even from the one who withholds it. Imagine two kings across two empires. One sends envoys gifts and letters when the other does not reply. He appears desperate, even if his kingdom is strong. The other king sits silently, continues expanding his influence, and lets time do the talking. Who appears more powerful? Who becomes more desirable as an ally or as a challenge? The same dynamic exists in the court of attraction. The one who stays unmoved creates tension, and tension is the source of desire. She may ignore you to test her own desirability, or worse, to entertain control. Regardless of the motive, your move must remain the same: indifference. Strategic, intentional indifference. You must be able to detach your emotional hunger from your strategic response. The one who desires most loses leverage. The one who appears to desire less, even if it is a mask, becomes the more attractive force. She will chase what runs away. She will question what doesn't explain. She will remember the silence that stood firm while her own behavior turned inconsistent. This is where most fail. They confuse emotional honesty with strategic intelligence. You may truly care. You may truly want her attention. But caring without control is chaos. And in the realm of power, chaos is punished. A woman is not drawn to the man who lays bare his soul at every cold shoulder. She is drawn to the one who holds his ground as if nothing has changed. Because in doing so, he creates the illusion that he does not need her attention, and that illusion, whether true or not, alters the balance of power. Scarcity elevates value. The nature of human desire is rooted in scarcity. We rarely chase what is easily available. What is abundant loses its luster, no matter how genuine or pure it may be. This principle applies universally, to gold, to status, and especially to attention. When a woman begins to ignore you, it is often not a sign that you must do more, but rather that you must become less accessible. The instinct to increase your presence in her world is precisely what devalues you in her eyes. Scarcity, not abundance, elevates value. The more she feels your presence is no longer guaranteed, the more she begins to question her own decision to withdraw. The tragedy of many men is that they believe effort will equal affection. They believe availability is attractive. But availability without demand is weakness. If you are always reachable, always replying instantly, always present, you become expected, not admired. You transform yourself into furniture, not a throne. A woman cannot respect what does not respect itself. By being ever present, you show her that your time and energy are freely given, even when she withdraws hers. This is not generosity, it is self-betrayal disguised as loyalty. To understand value, imagine a room full of beggars and a single man holding bread. The bread is desired not just because it satisfies hunger, but because it is rare. Now imagine a room full of bread and one man holding nothing. Suddenly, the bread is ignored. The attention a woman offers operates in the same way. When you stop being a common offering, when you remove yourself and allow your presence to shrink, you transform into something psychologically significant. The human mind is wired to notice what disappears, not what clings. Many men fear becoming scarce because they mistake it for rejection. But deliberate scarcity is not rejection, it is repositioning. You are stepping back, not out. You are reasserting control over the exchange. Her silence becomes the trigger for your withdrawal, but not in a petty or emotional way. Rather, it is the strategic move of someone who values his attention like a kingdom values its gold reserves. If she offers less, you must offer even less. Not in words, presence. This move destabilizes her expectations. She may have ignored you expecting a chase, but instead, she finds silence, not wounded silence, calm, confident absence. This forces her to confront the possibility that you were never dependent on her interest to begin with. That truth, or even the illusion of it, is powerful, because it rewrites the story in her mind. Suddenly, she is no longer in control of the dynamic. She is not the one being pursued, but the one noticing absence. That shift alone can unsate even the most emotionally distant woman. Time is the currency of life, and the most valuable people are those who spend it wisely. By becoming scarce, you are signaling to her that your time is spent building, conquering, creating, not chasing. You become less about reaction and more about direction. You move on your own terms. She can either align herself with your path or be left behind in the void she created. That void, when met with calm silence instead of pursuit, begins to reflect back to her the emptiness of her own decision. She begins to wonder where your attention went. What else? Or who else? Now has it? Men often ask, what if she moves on? The better question is, what if I become too valuable for her to ignore? The answer lies in the choices you make the moment she pulls away. Do you offer more of yourself, hoping it will reignite something? Or do you reduce your access, increase your value, and allow your progress to become the message? A man who understands his own worth does not measure it based on another's recognition. He becomes scarce, and in doing so, he transforms scarcity into mystique. Even in nature, the rarest flowers draw the most attention. They are not seen often, but when they bloom, their impact is undeniable. Your silence must be that bloom, rare, noticeable, and powerful. Your energy, when withdrawn, must leave a void large enough for her to feel it. And when she feels it, she will begin to remember the gravity of your presence, not because you shouted for it, but because you strategically removed what was once too easily given. In every game of power, those who offer themselves too freely are discarded the fastest. Scarcity does not mean vanishing forever. It means appearing with meaning. It means understanding that access to you is a privilege, not a default setting. The more she believes she can have you anytime, the less she will care to have you at all. But the moment she senses you are not easily reached, not emotionally, not physically, not digitally, her mind begins to wander into discomfort. and discomfort breeds interest far more effectively than attention ever will. Control the narrative without words. In the arena of influence and human behavior, what is not said often carries more force than what is spoken aloud. Power is rarely declared, it is implied. It is etched into the silences, the unreturned messages, the unread glances. When a woman begins to ignore you, most men rush to fill the silence with explanations, defenses, reassurances, or apologies. They attempt to take back control by speaking louder, longer, and more often. But in doing so, they reveal their lack of control. True influence is exercised not by chasing words, but by mastering their absence. When she withholds her attention, what she often desires is a reaction. The reaction confirms that she is still central in your mind, that you are still orbiting her world. Every time you respond impulsively, you reinforce the narrative that she controls the tempo of the relationship. The man who maintains his silence, who appears unmoved and unaffected, seizes authorship over the entire story. He does not explain. He does not beg for clarity. He does not unravel. In this restraint, he communicates more than words ever could. That his value is self-contained, his world continues with or without her engagement. Women are not confused by silence. They are intrigued by it. They may initiate distance to test your reaction, to see how tightly you cling. If your first instinct is to close the space she has created, she learns that your frame is fragile. But if you let her distance remain unclosed, if you remain composed, even distant yourself, then you shift the psychological equation. She expected a storm of insecurity. She found a calm fortress instead. The narrative she intended to write is now interrupted. The man who controls the narrative without speaking is one who lives as though he already knows the outcome. He is not interested in winning arguments or justifying his worth. He is only interested in preserving his posture and the integrity of his decisions. This breeds a rare kind of power, the kind that makes people question themselves in your presence. A woman will begin to question whether she misjudged you, underestimated you, or perhaps even overplayed her hand. This inner questioning is only triggered when the external world is silent. It is hard to hear your own thoughts when another is screaming for validation. But silence leaves a person alone with themselves, and people rarely enjoy that company. You must allow her to experience her own silence, not as a punishment, but as a mirror. When she says nothing, and you say nothing back, the echo chamber she created begins to disturb her. Her mind begins to fill in the blanks. Why didn't he follow up? Did he lose interest? Is he talking to someone else? Each of these thoughts becomes a seed of doubt, planted not by your hands, but by your absence. In this way, you are controlling the narrative not by what you say, but by what you refuse to say. The ones who master silence are not cold. They are strategic. They understand that to truly influence another person's thoughts, you must allow them to participate in writing their own version of the story. If you push too hard, you write the script for them, and they reject it out of pride. But if you step back and simply hold your frame, they begin to write the script themselves, often filled with uncertainty, curiosity, and attraction. The mystery of your restraint becomes a magnet, not because it is confusing, but because it is rare. Most people overshare. Most people chase. Most people demand clarity. The man who does none of that immediately stands apart. This psychological positioning must not be confused with passive aggression. It is not about withholding affection to manipulate. It is about refusing to overexpose yourself when your presence is not being honored. Your dignity is a currency. Every time you explain yourself unnecessarily, you spend it. Every time you beg to be seen, you pay for attention with pieces of your self-respect. But when you let your silence do the speaking, when your absence becomes your message, you remain intact. And more importantly, you shift the emotional weight back onto her side. She may have begun the narrative with control, but your non-reaction rewrites it in real time. She is no longer the one making the decisions. Now she's the one watching and waiting. Watching to see if you'll return. Waiting to see if your silence breaks. Wondering what you're thinking, who you're with, what you're planning. All of these questions emerge not from anything you said, but from what you refuse to say. In this, you create a tension, and tension is the birthplace of influence. Not forceful tension, but the kind that sits beneath the surface, tightening as each moment passes. To control the narrative without words is to understand that silence is not empty. It is strategic space. Space where perception is shaped, assumptions are born, and desire begins to regenerate. A man who is always explaining himself becomes predictable. A man who withholds explanation becomes a puzzle. And humans, by nature, are obsessed with solving puzzles. Rebuild power through strategic absence. There is a moment in every dynamic where attention becomes a weapon. When a woman pulls away, when her responses grow colder or vanish altogether, you are presented with a choice that most men do not recognize as a battlefield. They either panic and press forward, seeking reassurance in the form of validation, or they sulk into quiet frustration, unsure of what action still preserves their dignity. But the man who understands power does not do either. He disappears, not as an act of surrender, as an act of calculation. Strategic absence is not an emotional retreat. It is a display of strength dressed in silence. To rebuild your power, you must first withdraw it. Your presence, if it has been freely given, loses its psychological weight. It becomes expected, predictable, even disposable. When a woman ignores you, she is indirectly telling you that your availability has exceeded your value. At least in her current perception. The common reaction is to increase contact, to show your worth through presence. But that move only confirms her suspicions that your value is tied to her attention. Strategic absence disrupts that assumption completely. It is a reminder that your time is not owed, your energy is not infinite, and your attention is not a desperate offering. Strategic absence is not about ghosting or passive aggression. It is not rooted in bitterness, nor should it be performed as a punishment. It is simply a shift in focus. You step back from her world and step deeper into your own. You remove yourself from the frame in which she has grown accustomed to seeing you, and in doing so, you force a reevaluation of that picture. The longer your absence stretches, the louder your presence becomes in her mind. She is left not with noise, with space, and that space begins to fill with questions she cannot answer. A woman is drawn not to chaos, but to gravity. When you become absent in the right way, focused, progressing, self-contained, your gravity intensifies. You are no longer someone orbiting her emotional moods. You become a center of influence unto yourself. She may not immediately chase you. She may not even admit to noticing your withdrawal. But your silence lingers, your absence marks territory, and your lack of response becomes a mirror. In that mirror, she must face the possibility that you are not as dependent on her attention as she assumed. That thought alone disrupts her power and forces her to consider what she has lost access to. In the silence of your absence, rebuild your empire. Reinvest in the pursuits you neglected while trying to win her over. Strengthen your discipline, sharpen your ambitions, and expand your influence in every sphere untouched by her. Every time you resist the urge to return with explanations or apologies, you redirect that energy into becoming more formidable. That transformation is not invisible. It will radiate. People will begin to respond to you differently. Not because of her absence, but because of what you did with it. You did not decay. You evolved. You did not chase. You built. The man who withdraws strategically is not weaker. He is wiser. He knows that trying to force presence in the life of someone who is withdrawing only leads to further loss of status. But by disappearing at the right time and reappearing with greater strength, he does what no words could ever do. He redefines his position. She no longer sees him as a man seeking to be chosen. She begins to view him as a man others choose. A man who exists in demand, not desperation. Strategic absence teaches others how to treat you. When you do not respond to disrespect or indifference with pursuit, you establish boundaries without confrontation. You show that your energy is reserved for those who match it. You make it clear that you do not beg for space. You occupy it on your own terms. In this, you teach her that if she wants your attention, she must meet the standard. That it is not a faucet she can turn on and off for emotional entertainment. You become less of an option and more of an opportunity. And opportunities, when scarce, become valuable. Do not confuse this tactic with waiting. Waiting implies expectation. Strategic absence requires no expectation at all. You are not sitting by the door hoping for her return. You are not watching her updates with hidden longing. You have stepped outside the house altogether and begun building another one. Sturdier, grander, better protected. And if she returns, she must knock. If she doesn't, the fortress remains intact. This mindset is not arrogance. It is sovereignty. It is the reclamation of mental territory that was previously surrendered to her silence. Every man must reach the point where his identity is no longer reactive. When someone pulls away, it does not diminish who he is. When someone ignores him, it does not threaten his value, because he has built enough within himself that attention is a preference, not a necessity. He is not defined by inclusion or exclusion. He is defined by direction, and his direction remains forward, with or without an audience. Strategic absence is a decision made not in weakness, but in awareness. You know your worth, and you will not hand it over cheaply. You know the value of silence, and you will use it as your sword. You know the power of being missed, and that power can only emerge when you are truly gone. When a woman ignores you, the weak man chases, the emotional man reacts, but the strategic man transforms. He understands that power is not negotiated through attention, but earned through detachment. He does not beg for presence. He creates a presence so strong that his absence speaks louder than his words ever could. In a world driven by validation and constant availability, the rarest quality is self-restraint. When she pulls back, he does not lean in. He vanishes, only to return not with excuses, but with evolution. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are here to become so powerful in your silence, so rare in your access, and so unshakable in your focus that the loss of your presence is felt more deeply than your words ever could be heard. Let her wonder. Let your distance provoke reflection. While others waste their breath pleading to be seen, you rise, quietly, deliberately, unbothered. In the end, it is not who speaks loudest who wins. It is the one who knows when not to speak at all. Your silence, your scarcity, your absence. These are not reactions, they are strategies. Use them wisely.